In Michigan's Upper Peninsula, nearly everything is tied in some way to the forestry or mining industries. This of course extends to the railroading industry, which remains focused on moving these two core commodity groups throughout the peninsula. CN Job L552 is certainly no exception, and will be the focus of this edition of Pure Michigan Trains. With footage shot throughout 2017, we'll document the Quinnesec turn in detail over some of Michigan's most varied and scenic rails. This is CN Serves the North, the Quinnesec Turn, an edition of Pure Michigan Trains, presented by the Thornapple River Rail Series. The vast majority of Canadian national traffic in the Upper Peninsula passes through Escanaba, the heart of CN's local network, with lines radiating out in all directions towards Sault Ste. Marie, Green Bay, and Marquette. What is today's CN in the Upper Peninsula is a patchwork of predecessors such as the Soo Line, Duluth, South Shore and Atlantic, and the Chicago and Northwestern, now all rationalized into one, brought into CN through their acquisition of the Wisconsin Central. Today, the yard at Gladstone serves as the heart of operations, situated northeast of Escanaba on the Soo Line main across the peninsula, and handles all of the traffic in the area now that the CNW ore yard in Wells has ceased operations since the closure of the Empire Mine. Although this yard is a modest, flat-switching affair with only 13 tracks including the main line, it handles a dozen daily train originations and terminations, making this a small but busy place. Located at the north end of the yard are CN's engine and railcar servicing facilities, which more or less cover all of the needs of the Upper Peninsula operations. To the right, the L551 road freight to Sault Ste. Marie is building their own train, while outside the barn today's L552 Power awaits its crew. Gladstone handles the sort of traffic you'd expect to see in this area, dominated by mineral extraction and forestry. Plenty of iron ore hoppers and gonds populate the scene, along with plenty of pulpwood and boxes for finished paper products. The L552, the train we're following today, has the primary responsibility of switching out the Verso Paper Mill in Quinnesec, located near the Wisconsin border in the vicinity of Iron Mountain. Upon departure from Gladstone, they'll head west on the Manistique submain for Powers, where they'll pick up more traffic for Quinnesec before continuing up the Iron Mountain sub to their final destination. With a BC Rail -8 leading, the train definitely looks destined for a paper mill, with plenty of pulpwood and slurry for the paper production process. With permission from the rail traffic controller at Desk 12 in Homewood, Illinois, the engineer applies the throttle to get the show on the road. They enter the Manistique submain as two guys from the car department perform a roll-by inspection of the train, looking out for such things as dragging equipment and any handbrakes errantly left applied. Upon clearing the yard limits, they immediately face a stiff climb from Lake Michigan. With the throttle set liberally, the two GEs comply to keep them moving uphill. The station named Larch marks the top of the hill from Gladstone and is home to one of 2 online customers the L552 may work en route to Quinnesec. The warehouse here receives paper, wood pulp, and talc in boxcars, and today's edition has a Wisconsin Central high cube to set out inside the building. There is a second mainline turnout here, with a connection track leading over to the Marquette Range subdivision, once a different railroad, but now part of the CN network here in the Upper Peninsula. With this single car set out complete, we skip ahead to the Escanaba River Bridge. The Escanaba River crossing required one of the larger bridges in the Upper Peninsula to span the impoundment of the river created by the nearby dam. Also nearby is Verso's Escanaba Mill, which is a significant traffic source in its own right, receiving 2 pickups and 2 setouts each day. We're now overhead of the junction at Larch, where the aforementioned ex-Chicago and Northwestern Marquette Range subdivision passes overhead. Prior to both lines falling under common ownership, the C&W and Sioux line both had separate rails heading west from Escanaba, but were merged by the Wisconsin Central in favor of the C&W alignment. They created Algoma Junction as the main connection point southwest of Escanaba, which is our next scene as the L552 works its way out of town. Here at the northwest switch of Algoma Junction, trains heading south out of Gladstone get to choose between continuing on the Manistique sub towards Green Bay or redirecting for the Marquette Iron Range on the old C&W Iron Ore Trail. For the L552, this means realigning the turnout for the Green Bay course. Normal position for this turnout is towards Green Bay, with the entire line between Green Bay and Sault Ste. Marie being known as the Manistique subdivision. This despite the west half originating from the C&W and the east half left over from the Sioux line. Finally clear of Escanaba, the railroad opens up for the run to Powers. This is a 40-mile-per-hour railroad, and the train crews generally take advantage of this. At Pine Ridge, they pass the automatic equipment identification reader, which will alert CN and their customers that these rail cars are on the move for Quinnesec. There's a bit of a roller coaster at Hyde for the bridge over the Ford River. A trail for river access allows this view as the train flies overhead. At Bark River, an advantageously placed playground slide allows for this elevated view without getting out the drone. This town is also home to the only other in-route customer the L552 is responsible for. Raised Feed receives shipments seasonally, but with no such stop on any of the days we chased. Nearing the end of the jog from Escanaba, at Spalding they temper their speed on approach to Powers, where they'll make a pickup and diverge off the main line for Quinnesec. Here at Powers, the Manistee sub curves south for Green Bay, while the Iron Mountain sub branches off and heads northwestward. To make the turn, the L552 stops to allow the conductor to realign the turnout for the Y, and they're soon on the move, but not for long, as they've got a pickup to make. Stationed here, the CN2331 is here to serve as power for the local turns towards Green Bay and Pembine, the L546 and L547 respectively. As the 552 creeps around the Y and onto the Iron Mountain sub, they find themselves under a culvert-type structure for the roadway overpass. They stop here to make their pickup, as set out for them by the Green Bay turn on the opposite leg of the Y. While the L552 generally brings the pulpwood and slurry from Gladstone, the L546 generally brings up a significant number of boxcars and other traffic to be forwarded onto the mill. Once they've got their train back in one piece and properly air tested, it's time for the second half of the run to Quinnesec. A few miles west of Powers is the sleepy town of Hermansville, where the old Sioux Line main once crossed, but now dead ends into this former C&W branch line, as the rest of the line to Escanaba was abandoned as part of the previously mentioned rationalization project. For the L552, the track in this segment is the slowest on the line at just 10 miles per hour due to track conditions. While October was warm and leaves remained on the trees, by November winter had set in, with a predominantly white scene to be had. Waseda is home to a nice S-curve and plenty of telegraph wires that have not yet been fallen by time. As the railroad built westward, it encountered progressively hillier terrain. The first big grade is up from the Sturgeon River to Vulcan, a grade of 1.3%. Just a mile beyond the river, the grade tops out but can still make its mark on underpowered trains. With only one unit online at the moment, this edition is crawling by the top of the hill. With all that pulpwood and slurry on the draw route, it's impressive to see the old BC Rail -9 hold her own on the grade unassisted by the trailing SD70M-2. crossing US Highway 2, the busiest at-grade crossing encountered by the L552. The second major climb begins just beyond the highway, a 1.8% ascent over 2 miles. Adding to the challenge is the Main Street Bridge, which has been tagged with a 10-mile-per-hour slow order as it simply wasn't built to accommodate today's heavy loads. For the train we just saw making it up to Vulcan earlier, they've now brought the SD70M-2 online to finish out the climb to Quinnesec. A final flyover of US 2 completes the passing of Norway, but there's still a half mile to go until the summit of the hill. At long last, with the hills behind them, the L552 arrives at the Verso Paper Mill just east of Quinnesec. Once they receive their landing instructions from the on-site authorities, they take the turn off the CN main line and into the mill's vast railroad system. One of the newest paper mills in the country, established only in 1985, they specialized in coated paper for magazines and catalogs. The site is complete with its own 5-track rail yard, numerous spurs, and their very own switching engine, which is contracted out to Motive Rail. For one industry outside the energy sector to swallow a whole train is quite impressive, and this mill does so on a daily basis with 7-day-a-week service by the L552. With the set out of the inbound complete, the crew turns their attention to the outbound train, which is assembled by the plant switching crew and either left in the yard or set out on the CN main line. With the EOT hung and the air pumping up, the conductor begins his walk back to the head end, observing the brakes as part of the air test. With the paperwork and air test in order, it's time to return to Gladstone. With the late fall sun expiring to the west, the engineer eases the 2568 into motion. Their return to Gladstone will retrace their steps, complete with a set-out in Powers. They'll be back home in a few hours, and the cycle will begin again tomorrow for another edition of the L552, the Quinnesec Turn. Thanks for watching this edition of Pure Michigan Trains, presented by the Thornapple River Rail Series. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more, and don't forget to place your thoughts and questions in the comments below.